Welcome to Mama's Priceless Parties. Today I'm going to show you how to make the easiest chocolate cake using Betty Crocker's Super Moist Devil's Food Chocolate Cake Mix. I absolutely love the simplicity of this cake. We are going to start off by emptying the cake mix into a mixing bowl. We are going to then add 1 cup of milk, and I always use milk instead of water. Next, we're going to add half a cup of vegetable oil. And finally, 3 eggs. I'm going to use my hand mixer and I'm going to turn it onto the low speed just to gently mix the ingredients together so that no powder flies up at us. And once it's mixed in a little bit, then I'm going to move my mixer to the medium speed and I'm just going to mix until the ingredients are combined. Now, if you don't have a mixer, then you could whisk it by hand, but you would want to do that very rapidly for at least 2 minutes. Now let's get our baking pans ready. Today I'm using 2 9-inch round baking pans, but you could also use 8-inch baking pans as well. And we're going to start by greasing them with some butter. So I'm just going to take some butter and I'm going to rub it around the bottom of that baking pan. And you'll see as I'm rubbing it, you'll see that where you've actually rubbed the butter, there's like that film. You can see the grease right on it. Then I'm going to move to the side of the pan. And I'm going to finish off with the edge between the side and the bottom. You want to make sure that every part of this pan is covered in butter. Then we're going to do the same thing with the other baking pan. Now let's add the batter to the baking pans. So you want to add half the bowl to the first pan and half to the second pan. You want to try and be as consistent as possible with the level of the batter, but it does not have to be exact. I find using the silicone spatula the best way to get all the batter out of this bowl. Now I see some air bubbles in the batter, so I'm going to lift up the pan and I'm going to gently tap it on the table. Then we're going to do the same thing with the other baking pan. Now we are going to put our pans in a preheated oven. So on the back of the box, it tells us to put our oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for a nonstick pan. However, I like to reduce my temperature by 25 degrees, so my oven is set to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. This allows my cakes to bake more evenly and have a flatter top. You will want to put your timer on for the lowest time shown on the back of the box, so in my case, that is 23 minutes. Next, we're going to remove the cakes from the oven and we're going to do the toothpick test. So we're going to insert a toothpick in the center of the cake, and if it comes out clean, our cake is done. If not, we want to put it back in the oven for an additional 2 minutes and recheck. Now we are going to let the cakes cool in the pan for 10 minutes. To see the products and tools that I use in this video, check out the description box below. Now let's transfer our cakes to a cooling rack. And the easiest way to do this is to take our cooling rack, flip it upside down, place it on our baking pan. While holding the baking pan, flip the cooling rack right side up, remove the baking pan, and it's that easy. Then we are going to do our second cake and allow the cakes to cool completely before frosting. Now let's assemble our cake. I'm going to take the first layer of the cake and I'm going to put it in the center of the cake board or the platter if that's what you're using, and then we're going to add a filling. Today I'm using the Betty Crocker Creamy Deluxe Chocolate Frosting, and I'm just going to do a thin layer for the filling. We are going to start with adding a dollop of frosting to the cake. Then we are going to use our spatula and we're going to gently glide the frosting across the cake. So you always want to make sure that there is frosting between the spatula and the cake, otherwise you run the risk of pulling the actual cake up. Another important technique with adding the frosting is not going in a back and forth motion. It is simply adding a dollop and then go in one sweeping motion and pull away. Do not pull up with the spatula, glide it away from the cake. We're just going to complete this filling, and then we're going to add our second layer. So I'm going to turn my cake upside down so that the top of our cake is actually what was at the bottom of the pan, and you can see that it is nice and flat. I'm going to get my frosting. Again, I'm going to add a dollop. You always want to make sure, again, very important, that there is frosting between the spatula and the cake. I'm going to keep adding dollops, and with a sweeping motion, I'm just going to complete the top of the cake. Now, what I find with a chocolate cake is I do like it to be more of a simplistic look because I feel that it looks so creamy and delicious. So I'm just going to leave this top and we will come back to it. I'm going to move to the side of my cake and I'm going to get a dollop of frosting and I'm going to gently glide along the side of my cake. And I'm going to keep doing that until I have finished the whole side of the cake. So as you can see, it is simply add a dollop and glide. Add a dollop and glide. And I do not want to scrape. I want a decent amount of frosting on my spatula. And you can see I don't always move very far. So it's not like I'm going to get a dollop and go half the cake. I'm doing them in small sections because you want to make sure that you have enough frosting and that again, there's always frosting between your spatula and the cake. Now, as I'm doing this, you will see that there is a bit of an indent in the center, and that's because today I did not take the time to level out the cake exactly. And for this cake, I don't really need to because I don't want a straight side. So I'm going to get some icing, and in that center where there's a bit of a divot, I'm just going to put more frosting, and it's more of a rough look with this because I want it to look creamy. I don't want a flat side. And for a chocolate cake, I love the simplicity of this. Next, I want to do the same idea with the top. So I'm going to put a spoon in hot water to warm it up, dab it dry, and then I'm going to gently glide it along the cake just to leave an imprint. Now you can only do this for a little bit. I should stop here, but I'm going to show you what happens if I keep going. And look, it picked up that piece of the cake, which we don't want to do. So I'm just going to fix it by gently gliding over, adding some more frosting, rewarming my spoon, and I'm going to gently glide along the cake. And this is a technique I like to do to make it look more creamy. I prefer it to have this more textured look than a flat look for my chocolate cakes. And you would just keep doing this. Make sure to rewarm it in between. To finish off the cake, I always like to clean up my cake board or platter. I simply use a butter knife wrapped in a paper towel and I'm going to run it around the bottom of the cake. It gives it a nice clean line and it cleans up any frosting on the edge of that cake board. Now if this one round does not take off the frosting, then simply get the paper towel damp and then you can rub the frosting off. And this simple trick has given it a nice elevated look. And I think that looks absolutely scrumptious. I hope you enjoyed making this chocolate cake with me today and that yours turns out absolutely priceless. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Happy baking!